Chris.
Hey, Jay.
Here we are again for another episode of the Equity Accelerator podcast. We are joined again by one of my good friends, a real estate agent here in the Portland marketplace. Her name is Amanda Haworth. And Amanda and I have been pals for quite a while, and we compare a lot of notes. Oh, I guess let me back up. This podcast is all about what it's like to be in the real estate business, what it's like to be in the mortgage business. Of course, I am with Sierra Pacific Mortgage and the PDX home loan team. And, we talk a lot about successes and failures and ideas and cool books to read and things to do to make your business go better. But I also wanted the Equity Accelerator concept to be larger than just equity in your real estate or your portfolio. We always talk about equity in relationships and equity in your personal health and your mind and body and all that stuff. So a huge thing that Amanda and I have touched on over and over again over the years is we both have kids about the same age, and we're both married. And one of the, I'm hoping that this conversation will really tackle and talk about what it's like to run a real estate business, to run a mortgage business in our modern world, while trying to maintain your marriage and trying to maintain raising your kids and navigating all of those hurdles. And Chris, you also have two kids around the same age. My kids are 10 and 8 years old at the time of this recording.
Nice.
So Amanda, how old are your kids?
My youngest is about to turn 4, and my oldest is 7.5.
Okay. Wow. Your kids are a little younger than I remember.
Nice.
Yes. Yep. In the trenches, as my husband says.
Yeah. I always, one of my things that I always tell people when they're just, I can see they've got the 1,000-yard stare around just like their life and having kids, is I'm just like, when your youngest kid turns 4, everything changes.
It's true.
That's
Yes.
kind of my first.
I feel like it was like 6 or 7 for me. Maybe I was on the slow path. I don't know. Yeah.
I just remember it was finally getting easier, and then I got pregnant again. I was like, starting over.
Fudge. Yeah, I remember.
Brave soul.
Yeah, our kids are my wife and I. Our kids are less than 2 years apart, so it was like a little bit of a shock.
Irish twins.
Not exactly. Actually, my wife and her brother are 11 months apart. That's legit Irish twins.
Oh,
Wow.
Their birthdays are like a couple weeks apart.
oh,
Wow. That's amazing.
yeah.
Exactly. So, Chris, how about you? How old are your kids?
14 and 12.
So you're the most advanced. I'm looking into the future.
I am down the road.
Yeah.
We're approaching those teenage years for sure. But.
Yeah. So my wife and I are, so our oldest is in 5th grade right now, and we're looking at middle schools. That's just like the big area of stress in my life right now. But I guess for Amanda, one of the biggest area of stress in my marriage is probably I'm on the phone too much.
Yeah.
I come home and I can't stop looking at my phone. And it is an addiction. And at the time when I get home, it's not always, I'm not always in business. I'm not always looking at business stuff. Sometimes I'm just sort of like, everything's so blurry right now.
Yeah.
It's difficult. I don't know if you've had an experience like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, I think as a woman, my experiences are a little bit different. I try to remind men of that quite a bit. There are other realtors in my office who will make statements like, well, when I first started, I didn't have any help. And I'll be like, well, you had kids, right? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, so who was watching your kids? And they're like, oh, my wife. And I was like, oh, so you did have help. And so, yeah, exactly. But, also my husband was the stay-at-home parent for our second child. But now, that they're a little bit older, it is hard. We have to definitely remind ourselves, like, put the phone down. And oftentimes, there's a period of time where it's the after school shuffle, where you're like picking up kids and doing all that. And that's often when our clients are getting off of work and really want to talk to you. And I have to set really clear boundaries, just like unless this is urgent, I will call you back when my kids go to bed at 7:30. And most of the time that works, but it also means late evenings for me a lot.
I grew up, so in the 90s, my mom was a real estate agent. and in the 80s too, I guess. And I remember, and this is back before email, before cell phones.
My dad was a realtor too.
I remember we had that's so funny. We both
Uh-huh.
had that same experience. But we had, so my mom had this like telescoping
Antenna.
phone cord.
Oh, phone cord.
And like, so she could, because their phone was on one side of the kitchen, and she was like trying to make us dinner, doing like classic mom stuff. I mean, my dad was also working. He was not a stay-at-home dad. He was a real estate developer. He was out and about and did working wild hours. But my mom was just like on the, it was probably 30-foot long telephone cable that
That's amazing.
We'd have to kind of like go around, and it would just,
that is such a flashback. Wow.
that's how it used to be.
Yes.
That's how it used to
I
be.
know. I saw something recently because, there's a lot of articles anymore about how much parents are on the phone and, you're ignoring your kids and all this stuff. But I think there's all this pressure for us to constantly being engaged with our kids. And in the article, the woman was pointing out, like, look, parents have been ignoring their kids from the dawn of time.
Right.
Like, we all remember our parents on the phone. They just were like attached to a cord instead of just walking around a park.
Or like my parents would just read the newspaper for hours on a Saturday or Sunday, and we would just leave the house, and they had no idea where we were going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more pressure for us to constantly be watching our kids and being engaged with our kids, which I don't think is necessarily healthy for them. Like, they need to figure out how to play on their own.
I agree. I agree. Yeah, that's, and your kids are still they're younger, and they get used to us paying attention. I think it will be a negative, the fact that we're hovering over and engaged and so involved. But I mean, what's the alternative? I can't just like let them really run the streets.
No, we would get arrested.
So it's kind of, I mean, the alternative would be to move into a more rural community, to leave the center of the city.
Although, I mean, I grew up in a really small town, and I imagine it's still different even for those parents who are still living there. When I was a kid, my brother and I had like a little kid bike gang, and we, like, during the summer, just from dawn to dusk, we would just be riding around, probably from about the time I could start riding a bike, like 6, 7. And I can't imagine that there are parents who are still doing that even in a small town. I think it's just a different time.
Right.
Maybe so. I mean, I don't know how it's going to manifest in these kids like 10, 20 years from now, what they're going to, what their attitudes will be. What do you think, Chris? You're a couple of years ahead of us.
Oh, what do I think about what? About kids?
Like, now we're talking about another topic, which I think is interesting, which is, are we too engaged on a like sort of hour by hour basis with our kids? How do we?
We're not in our house. We're not, like there are moments where we check in, and for the most part, and for me, that's like all the pressure around, should your kids be on technology all the time or not? And I kind of come from the camp of like, I would rather that my kid be familiar with technology and understand it rather than have it be a bad thing. And just teach them to be responsible. Like, we talk a lot about like, look, how is your technology time? Do you feel like it's going well? Do you feel like you're on it too much? And they just get to answer that question for themselves. Now, if they were being irresponsible, be like, okay, well, listen, there's clearly a problem, but we're going to talk about it. I'm not just going to take their phone away. So. I don't know. Where do you fit on that, Amanda?
Well, so we try not to allow screen time during the week. And then like the weekend, we end up letting them watch way too much. My principal broker, Matt Guy, was talking about going away with a few groups of families, and there was like this big house, and the kids all just like played together in the basement. I was like, oh, I bet they just like watched TV the whole time. He's like, actually, they didn't watch TV at all. That was like, who are you? Why would you do that? So I mean, I grew up with hippie parents, and they really didn't let us watch TV much at all. So I felt like that was the other extreme. And then when I would go to my friends' houses, I would just like glued to the TV the whole time. So I agree that like they need to figure out what a healthy balance is. Whether that be, that they don't get any screen time or that they get just like small doses. But I definitely think that, we probably let it go too far on the weekends.
I think
it's hard to I mean, you have to find some balance, because if you don't let them watch, if you don't let them have a screen, you have to really give them some clear direction on what you expect them to do.
Yep. And screens, I mean, it's a reality. It just seems like screens are going to become more and more part of our lives as opposed to pulling back.
Yeah. I think too, like with, so our kids didn't get cell phones until middle school.
Yeah.
So like, that was just a couple of years ago. And before that, they didn't have phones. So it was like, maybe they would get the iPad, or maybe they would watch a show, on Apple TV or something like that. But, I think the expectation or the age range is getting lower and lower for kids to have phones.
Yeah.
But mine didn't have them until middle school, just because that's kind of felt right to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think we're probably going to be in the same camp.
Yeah. I mean, well, I guess I want to get back to talking about how it influences your ability to do business in the margins, particularly as a mom. That's a vector that I don't have to navigate. And that's gotta be twice as difficult as far as just like other expectations and the other moms in the school are involved in this way and that way. And I
think the other part of it is that like, not only am I the mom, I'm the flexible job parent.
Exactly.
So, no matter what, like if we have a snow day, I'm the one that's home. And, if they're sick, like my little one was sick for a good part of December. Luckily, I was able to manage it, but I'll give you an example. She got the stomach flu. And I thought enough time had passed, so she wasn't contagious. So I took her with to show a house. And my client's mother, who she was like visiting from Tennessee, ended up like in the hospital throwing up. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. So so stuff like that happens, and you're just like, I don't really know a way around it at this point, And we have a ton of support. Like my brother lives 2 blocks away. My parents live an hour and a half away. So there are people out there who have no support. So we're lucky.
I want to ask this question. So you said boundaries. I'm curious, what are some other secrets to your success of like being a parent while also managing a career? Like, so you said boundaries. Are there other things that come to mind that have really been helpful?
Yeah. For the last couple years, I've had licensed help. So a partner, assistant. So people who can go open a door in the evening for me or work on a weekend. I try to really limit working on evenings and weekends outside of the house. I get a lot of computer work done after the kids go to bed, which, doesn't leave a lot of time for my husband and I to connect. But I figure it's kind of, it's more when they're young, and then hopefully when they're older, it'll get a little bit easier. They can have more independence. But yeah, I have to have help.
That's really good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's so demanding. It's so demanding, really. I can't imagine. And clients, they're trying to get at us after hours. I think as a lender, I get to set that expectation a little bit more. It's not as hard for people to imagine that I'm not working after hours. Whereas a realtor, I think it's really the opposite. If you're like only working business hours, they're probably a little perplexed, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are realtors out there who set really clear boundaries, who are just like, these are my hours, this is when I work, and you could make it work or not. I have always tried to fit things into everyone's schedule so that it works for everyone. So, if I have clients who work 9 to 5, I try not to show houses in the evening just because it gets dark. In the summer, it's a little bit easier, but it doesn't really help anyone to look at a house in the dark. So, I'll set a couple of hours aside on the weekend to go show houses, and my husband will, like I'll check in with him and just be like, is this a good time? Is this time or this time better?
Right. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever studied any of the Buffini real estate model at all?
A long time ago when I first started, I got real into Buffini.
It seems like he has the Buffini model has like some pretty cool ideas about setting those boundaries, and basically
Totally.
I don't work on Sundays, and like if you leave me a message after this time, I'll call you back the next day on your like set it outgoing messages and set an autoresponder on your email. Like, hey, I got your email, but I only reply to email for these times a day. God, can you imagine? I wish I could do that.
Yeah, I definitely, when I have a first, especially with buyers, when I sit down for that first buyer consult, I'm pretty clear about, if you can avoid the hours of 4 p.m. to 7 p.m., that's ideal for me. And then I talk about like how we communicate. So if it can wait, please send me an email. If it's more urgent, you need to send me a text so that I can respond right away. Because even a phone call, like if I'm in another meeting or if I'm, playing with my kids or something, I can glance at a text, see if it's urgent, send a quick response, or deal with it. But like a phone call, you have to stop, you have to listen to the voicemail, things like that.
I know it's hard. And I'm also struggling with the idea of how much of my business is automated, like how many, and how I think I've gotten too automated, and I want to try to humanize and be more engaged with my clients and make more phone calls and do more face-to-face, more networking. And it takes more hours, and it's more of an emotional lift,
Well, I will say that social media has been amazing for my business as a mother. Like when my oldest was a baby, like I just was on Facebook all the time, just like not necessarily posting about like how great a realtor I am, but like my way of getting business is to just say like, oh, I saw this interesting thing at a house, like just like subtle reminders about what I do. And then I also really a lot of how I've built my business is by supporting other people. So my husband is a musician. I would go to his shows. I would go to our friend shows, so I built kind of this like musician clientele. And then same thing with a lot of our like maker and artist friends where, if somebody's got a business, I'm all over social media promoting it so that they know, when they're here, oh, I need to buy a house and somebody else is talking about it. Here's my friend Amanda. She's been really great in promoting my business. I'm going to do the same for her.
Or not just promoting my business, but here's Amanda. She understands where I'm coming from as a person because we appreciate the same things.
Yep.
And like, she's going to help me. And Chris and I talk about that all the time. Like, Chris, to give you some backstory, man, Chris was my coach for a year. We had a 1-year coaching relationship a couple years ago. But he was
best year of my life, James.
Oh, well,
nice.
Goes without saying. But it's, yeah, we talked about, you were really big on the tribal component of promoting your business. And I think being a mom or being a parent becomes a tribe as well. I think a lot of people that I've done business with are parents in networks of people that my wife hooked up with early on in preschool communities and that kind of thing. That's a huge part of my social network now, and they're all in there on Facebook, and that so that's an interesting component. Also getting involved in the school and like that you kind of become like the go-to person of your school. I wish I felt like I was the go-to person in my school. I don't know what's going on there.
So my daughter's in 2nd grade, and right now I'm helping the head of the PTA find a house. So I'm like, don't screw this up.
Don't clutch.
Nice.
I know, right? This will be key.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
So good.
Well, Amanda, I really appreciate you spending some time with us here. I know we should have you back, and we'll talk about it further because I know it just gets weirder and weirder as your kids get older. We just got a cat. We just got a cat this weekend. That's our big story.
Oh,
So I've never had one before.
put that on your plate. I know. We don't have any pets on purpose.
I know, right? It's so funny when I met or when we first started having kids, I recognized early that moms, as soon as they brought their baby home, like if they had pets, like they immediately just like raged on their pets. Like they're just like, I hate that dog. Like, God, like it just becomes, it's just too much.
Yeah.
But we're adding that back into our world to get so far it's like, I don't know if you have any pets, Chris, but the cat is like, doesn't make a peep. It kind of takes care of itself. It's kind of weird.
Cats are good like that. We have a puppy, so it's the opposite.
Oh, yep. So you have a baby.
We have a baby.
Yeah.
Well, I know that having a dog is much more of a social thing. You have to take it out for walks. You go to the dog park. You get involved in like dog universe and
Get that dog owner business.
yeah, that's probably a pretty good angle for like
Seriously.
mixing it up with people in a business way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Amanda, if people wanted to reach out to you, where do they go? Like, if they wanted to connect with you somehow to talk more about real estate stuff?
Yeah, you can find me on the Living Room Realty website at livingroomre.com and just click on the agents tab.
Yep. Awesome. And if you want to reach out to me, you can email me at james@pdxhomeloan.com. We'd love to hear your feedback and your stories about running your business and managing your home life and your kids and that kind of thing. I'd love to start a larger conversation about things that you've done that were horrible failures and things that you've done that were horribly successful, wonderfully successful, not horribly successful. Yeah, thanks again. And we'll see you next week on the next episode of the Equity Accelerator.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
James. See ya. Bye, Amanda.
Bye. Thank you.